Ahead with the agenda. So just so you all know, this is kind of how we're going to be moving forward. Obviously, we're doing the welcome right now and introductions. And then Danielle from Co-Communications will be moving forward with talking about cultivating loyal customers with relationship-based marketing. She obviously knows quite a bit of what she's talking about as she works for a marketing firm. And then Allyson from Full Heart Farm is going to share her experience of marketing at Farmstands. And Allyson has done quite a few presentations on this subject. She is a local farmer in Ledyard and has done a great job with marketing her farm, in my opinion. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. And then, of course, questions at the end. So we definitely want you to ask questions. So feel free to either put them in chat while we're going through the presentation. And if the speaker sees them while they're going on and can address them real quick, then maybe we'll throw it in there. But if not, I will keep track of chat and mark those questions and make sure that they get answered at the end. So just a quick little introduction. I'm going to turn this over to Jeff Martin real quick to talk about the program that's funding this training. So Jeff, do you want to go ahead and talk about that?
Sure. Thanks, Becca. Hi, everyone. It's nice to see a lot of familiar names and faces out there. Thanks for joining us tonight. My name's Jeff Martin. I work at Yukon Extension on sustainable food systems. And just to orient you a little bit, this training is connected to a project, a 3-year project that's funded by USDA. And what we're trying to do is focus on 23 towns in Northeastern Connecticut, and we're working to develop tools, skills, resources to boost sales for farms in the area that do direct-to-consumer sales. So whether it's a CSA or through a farmer's market or farm stands. So that's what we're doing. That's sort of what's behind this. That doesn't mean if you're from a different part of the state, you're not welcome. You are absolutely welcome. All these skills are transferable anywhere, but a lot of our work at other times during the year is focused on this 23 town region. And if you're in the 23 town region, we hope you have heard about it already. And if you haven't, let us know and we'll try to connect you more into what we've been doing. One of the things we have done in this first year of the project is develop a guide, the Farm Fresh Guide to Northeastern Connecticut. There's a winter gift guide coming out shortly. And there's been a lot of work done on a website, the Heart CT Grown website as well, for the entire state as well as Northeastern Connecticut. So check those things out if you haven't seen them yet. Thanks, Becca.
All right, so just a little bit more about us. I'm obviously Becca Toms. I'm the communications coordinator for this project, and I work with Jeff. Jeff, for those of you who don't know, is the extension educator for the Tolan office and works with a lot of different programs in food systems work. And then on the call, we also have Mackenzie White. She is a program assistant. Mackenzie, do you want to say hi?
Sure, thanks, Becca. Hi, everyone. For those that don't know me, I'm Mackenzie White. I work in the Tolan County office. And I hope you're all doing well as your families and your farms. And thanks again for attending tonight. Thanks, Becca.
Thanks, Mackenzie. And then we also have Alyssa. She is our student employee from Yukon. So Alyssa, do you want to say hello?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Alyssa Benoit from, I'm a senior at Yukon, and I work underneath Jeff and work on this project for Northeastern Connecticut and Heart CT Grown, as well as an initiative called Taste of Mansfield that works specifically in Mansfield. And glad to see so many people here tonight.
Thanks so much. So, if you have any questions for any of the four of us throughout the evening regarding the project overall, feel free to direct message us in the chat. That's totally fine. We're happy to help out as best we can. And then we also just wanted to give notice to our wonderful Farm Advisory Board. These are the farmers that help us out with this project to make sure that what we're doing is helpful to farms and to farmers. We appreciate their input and help. So just for those that are in that 23 town region, I just want to give a little save the date. I'll be sending out a formal little save the date email next week, but February 24th, we're going to have our Northeast Connecticut Farm Stakeholder Gathering. And basically, it's going to be a time for us to get together over Zoom and kind of share a little bit about the experiences over the last year. We'll obviously share the things that we've been doing regarding this grant, but also we want to hear from the farmers in Northeastern Connecticut about what have been the challenges and also the wins for you all, so that we can learn from each other and continue doing really great work and getting local food to consumers in the area. So if you can save that date, that'd be great. And we're excited to see you all then. So next we have Danielle. Danielle has actually been working closely with us on this project. She has been so helpful in giving us ideas and kind of encouraging us in certain directions, because none of us are marketing professionals, but she is. So you can read her bio here. She has tons of experience and works again with Co-Communications, which actually has a couple of different locations in both New York and Connecticut. I believe she's based out of Hartford area because they have a Hartford office there. So definitely knows what she's talking about. It's her primary career, and I know that we've really appreciated what she shared with us so far. So I'm excited about what she's going to present. And then, of course, we also have Allyson, and some of you may know her already from Full Heart Farm. Allyson is pretty involved in the farming community, I'd say, in Connecticut, and has led multiple workshops over the years. I remember a couple years ago, she led a workshop on website design that I got to attend, and now I'm making websites for farms too. So thank you, Allyson, for those tips because it's helped. But again, you can read her bio here. She has a wonderful farm that really brings people into the community. So we really wanted to have Allyson join us because that relationship component is so key in what she does, and in making sure that customers feel like they're part of something. So she'll have a lot of great things to share as well. So that is my little spiel. It's time for me to stop talking, and we would love for Danielle to go ahead and take over and lead the way.
Well, I first want to echo Becca and Jeff's sentiments and thanking everyone for being here tonight. And I hope that everyone is healthy and doing well. As Becca mentioned, we have been working with Yukon Extension since the inception of this project. And since Jeff said, I'm going to go after this grant and it could really help the towns in this region. And so to give you some context, we started our engagement by doing some research, and what led us to the topic of relationship-based marketing was the overwhelming number of farmers in Northeastern Connecticut who said that word of mouth referrals were their #1 source of business, and that they recognize the importance of relationships. We realize there are barriers in this space, and that things like pricing competition from big box stores, customer perception of value, that those are all challenges that you face in your business. But at the end of the day, nothing can replace the relationship that you have with your customers and that investment that you're making in building that loyalty. I should note that one of the things that came out of the research was an identification of 4 primary themes around which to focus the marketing and the messaging. 2 of those were community and relationships. So we have really honed in on that as an important value in helping to highlight everything that is happening in Northeastern Connecticut and all of the wonderful things that the various farms in the community are doing. So I will take you through a short presentation. As Becca mentioned, we really want to hear from you and your questions and make sure that you're getting out of this what's important to you and for your farm. So one thing that we should all note is that when supply chains failed us earlier this year, the farming community really stepped up. And as we heard in some research that we did at the beginning of COVID from the 81 farms in the northeastern part of the state, was that many were fortunate enough to experience an immediate uptick in customers, and that people were turning to them saying, hey, I can't find dairy, or I'm having trouble finding fresh produce, can you help? And so to know that your farms were there as a resource for the community in a time when they needed them and that people turned to you as a resource is certainly a wonderful thing. And now we think about those relationships that you built during the pandemic and how do we grow those relationships with customers, and also how do we foster relationships among organizations in the same town or a small group of towns. When businesses work together, there's a lot of added value to be recognized from that collaboration, and we want to make sure that you have the opportunity to tap into that. So one of the things that we always like to think about is the spirit of collaboration. So whether you're collaborating with your customers, collaborating with other farms who offer different products than what you have available, or collaborate with small businesses in the community who can help to heighten the visibility of what you're doing and structure a win-win relationship, those are all key components of relationship-based marketing. One thing that's probably never been more true is that people do business with people. We have robots, we have algorithms, we have all these wonderful automated customer service tools to try and make things easier. But at the end of the day, people want to know there is someone on the other end, that there's someone who is invested in their interests, what matters to them as a consumer, and truly cares about them having a positive and rewarding customer experience. And it really starts at day one. It starts with that friendly, approachable, knowledgeable spirit that you all bring to the work you do on your farms, at Farmstands, farmers markets, and when you're out in the community as an educator or a community partner. And you want to let people know that you value them as an individual. They're not just a number. They're not just one of the hundreds of people who come to your orchard every fall. They're not, one of several people who come to pick berries during the summer or to stop by the farm stand on their way home. They are an individual, and that you know them by name. And I know I've, in the research, really enjoyed hearing from many folks who have, multi-generational farms, and they talk about how, their senior parents have relationships, and now they have those individuals' kids stopping by to say hi to someone and to continue that relationship from generation to generation. And I think that's such a powerful thing, especially in this day and age, and particularly during a pandemic where we all can feel a little bit isolated in our homes, and not out in some of those larger community gatherings that we've been, so much accustomed to. One of the things to think about with marketing in general is there is this myth of, build it and they will come. So, I have this really great customer experience at my farm, or I have this really great small business with all these really interesting things you can see about the production and how things work and how the people on our team work together. But if you're not telling people about it, and you don't have both traditional marketing and then that word of mouth buzz going, it's going to be really hard for you to draw in more folks and to really expand that audience. One of the things that we're big proponents of as a marketing firm is using some research to inform that initial strategy. So that can be as simple as asking people when they stop by the farm stand how they heard about you if you don't recognize them and they're a new face in the crowd. And it can also be a little bit more in depth if you do collect customer email addresses or other information from your customers to be able to do something as short as a 3 to 5 question electronic survey that just says, hey, how can we better inform you about what's happening on the farm? And where do you look for information to decide where you're going to shop and who you're going to support in the community? And that information is really, really important. And that will give you a good foundation on which to build some of these relationships that are so important to marketing as a whole. So when we think about rolling out the welcome mat, so to speak, this starts with the customer's very first interaction with the business. It's the minute they pull up to the farm stand. It's the minute they enter the gates of the farmer's market. It's that very, very first interaction. And it can be something as simple as just making sure that they're greeted and someone says hello to them. I think we've all had that, sort of traditional customer service experience where you walk into a store or another business and the person's back is facing you, or, you're trying to get someone's attention and, flag them down to answer some questions and you have a really challenging time. And so you really just want to make sure that everybody who's working at your farm stand and on your team has this shared mindset of building relationships, and that they're thinking not just about the transaction, but the lifetime value of the customer. So that's something that we talk a lot about in marketing is lifetime value. I think we all know it's so much easier to retain an existing customer than it is to attract a new one. So we want to think about, what can we do to keep that existing customer happy? What can we do to turn that existing customer into a raving fan? And then how can we use that existing customer to help bring new customers into the fold? Certainly one challenge we all have today is the experience. Consumers value experiences. Younger consumers in particular, and the millennial generation, really value experiences. And so how can you still deliver an experience when everybody's masked up and staying 6 feet away, and you can't do some of the really fun social festival type things that you may have done on your farm to welcome customers in the past? And so that certainly requires a little bit of creative thinking. But again, if you have some of those customer insights and understand what it is that people value about you and why they keep coming back, it'll be a lot easier to create some of those welcoming and engaging experiences for people. As I mentioned, research and getting to know your customers is certainly critically important. And we think about that, and what do you say? Well, what information should I be gathering? What do I need to know about my customers? Well, for starters, how did they find you? Did an existing customer tell them that you have the freshest produce and the best selection and they should stop by? Did they look online and see some Google reviews or some Facebook reviews? Do they follow you on Instagram and saw your content and thought, oh, I should really stop by? Do they get an email newsletter from you? Those are just a handful of the things to think about when it comes to how you are acquiring customers and where they're coming from. Certainly the step after that is to figure out why they keep coming back. Again, some of those earlier things I mentioned, is it the selection? Is it the quality? I should mention freshness and flavor were two of the other key findings that came out of our research that we did back in the earlier part of 2020. And one of the comments that was made was that, a customer said to someone at a farmer's market, it just tastes different than what you buy in the grocery store. And so I think different is one of those words we all struggle to capture. But with some additional drilling down, we discovered that part of that was the freshness, and that the day you buy it and a few days later, it still looks absolutely as fresh as the day you picked it up at the farm stand, because it hasn't been sitting on a shelf for who knows how long and been through a handful of distribution points. So understanding that those are other values, those may be some areas where you want to look to probe some insights from your customers. As I mentioned, surveys, casual customer conversations are all good ways to gather that information. And the thing you want to think about is the consumer values. I mentioned freshness and flavor. I mentioned relationships. I mentioned community. But as we think about the COVID climate in particular, there's a lot of innovation that has happened in the way that people can access food from farms. I know a number of farms really went out of their way to implement contactless pickup systems and contactless payment, and to explore, adding an online shopping component to their websites that they may not have had before to be able to capture those customers. And so you have to think about those values. As Becca said, and we were all kind of having a conversation early on tonight, we don't know what lies ahead. None of us do. But one thing that is critically important is understanding why the customers you have today continue to come back and how you can build upon the great work you've already done to grow those relationships. And to think about, okay, well, even if the COVID climate evolves and we go back to a more traditional way of shopping and experiencing and engaging, what lessons were learned during this climate that help to attract customers that will hold true. And again, those are relationships that grow in value over time, just from the pure nature of coming back and buying more services, but also becoming brand ambassadors and wanting to tell your friends about the great experience you have and wanting to suggest they support a business in the community. And at the end of the day, you're going to have people who shop local because they firmly believe in supporting the businesses in their community. Now, while we did find in our research that that term has become a little bit saturated in the marketplace and it's not regulated, so who really knows what local exactly means? That is something to think about. Do you have customers who only shop in town or only shop in a couple of towns because they want to support those businesses? Do you have customers that are driving a few towns over because of the quality of the product and the value that they perceive that product provides them? All of those things are giving you data to inform your marketing, to inform your business strategy, and also a starting point for the conversations when your customers stop by to make a purchase. Oh, how did you enjoy what you bought the last time you were here? Oh, did you know we also have meat? All of those conversations can help to build the relationship. And one thing that you're going to find over time is you have an opportunity to not only be a source and to promote the products that you have, but to be a resource for people. So I think the farmers market is probably the easiest place to make this illustration. So if you're set up and you have solely vegetables, as you're offering at the farmers market, and someone says, oh, I had really hoped I could pick up some, goat milk while I was here, and there's another farm at the farmers market who has that, you become a knowledgeable resource for your customers, and you can say, oh, you should visit so-and-so. They're just a few booths down. Again, it's relationship building. Now you're building a relationship potentially with that other farmer for referrals. You're also building a relationship with that customer and letting them know that if you don't have what they're looking for, you're a knowledgeable resource and you're willing to connect them to someone else at the farmer's market who does have what they're looking for. Those introductions can lead to referrals. Those introductions can lead to some really interesting collaborations. They could lead to a new pickup point for a CSA. They could lead to a distribution model during the, opportunity during the off season. So always be thinking about those relationships, not only with the direct consumer, but with the other folks who are in the community. Again, whether it's another farm who has a different offering, a small business, always think about that added value. And the benefit that comes there is you can also then tap into their networks and the relationships that they already have in place. In marketing and sales, they like to call those folks the friendlies because they already have some exposure to your brand through a trusted source. And that can really help with sort of expediting the customer acquisition process. So always think about ways to expand and grow those relationships. So meeting customers where they are is probably one of the greatest challenges that I think every business faces. So you have your core set of offerings, you have your core delivery model, you have, your core message points. And sometimes they resonate right off the top with customers, and sometimes it takes a little massaging and a little bit of finessing. So always think about meeting customers where they are. Now, this isn't always sort of a physical destination. This can be a customer mindset destination. So for example, think about the customer who's always gotten their produce every summer from the same farm stand. And maybe that farmer's retired and that farm stand is no longer there. Well, yes, there's a customer acquisition opportunity, but you also have to step back and think about, okay, I'm now asking the consumer to change their behavior. I'm asking them to build a relationship with a new vendor, so to speak. and I'm asking them to change how and where they get their food. So those are all, some barriers that can be overcome with not a ton of effort in most instances, but there's something to be really mindful of. So you always want to keep the consumer mindset at play. For example, convenience, we know, is a really big factor. And we found in our research that can be particularly challenging in some communities, or for individuals who, for example, make one monthly shopping trip to a central destination to conserve, budget, and that's sort of their investment in transportation. And so they don't have the luxury of being able to go to all those different places. So it's not that they don't want your product. It's not that they wouldn't love the experience of shopping with you, but then you have to think about, okay, well, how can I make what I offer convenient to those individuals so that they can benefit from what we offer? And so meeting customers where they are can be a really great relationship building opportunity. I always encourage our clients to think about some of those barriers as ways to forge new relationships. So, can you innovate? Can you tweak what you're doing? Of course, it has to make sense for your business. Never advocate for being the chameleon, where you're sort of all things to all people and it makes sense in every scenario, because that can be really challenging to maintain from a business perspective. But showing some level of adaptability and awareness of consumer needs and being able to make those shifts is really important. And that can be something as simple as, letting a really loyal customer know that if they can't come pick up their CSA share on a certain day, they can stop by the next day. All those little things really add so much value to relationships. And obviously in this COVID environment, there's been a lot of adapting and a lot of consumer change. And so we're going to have to keep thinking about how we can evolve our behaviors as brands and our behaviors as consumers to sort of meet at that, central destination. When we think about capitalizing on what customers love, this is where that relationship and that consumer feedback is so incredibly important. Because if you don't know why people are coming to you, and you don't necessarily know what their favorite thing is to get from the farm, it can be really challenging to sort of help prioritize the marketing and the resources and the messaging. So always thinking about asking customers, why did you stop by today? It's great to see you. Those little conversation starters. Some of the things to think about, not only the product offering, but is it the purchase method? Do they like that they can drive up and that their purchase gets put in a crate outside and then they can safely get out of their car and put it in the trunk without any human contact? At the height of COVID, there were some farms in other parts of the state who found that to be very impactful because everybody was doing their best to stay home and stay away, back in March and April, but all it took was some contactless pickup to be able to get their business back on track. Is it location? Do people like that they can pick up their CSA from a business a couple of towns over and not have to drive out to a slightly more remote location? Do they like, for example, that your farm stand brings in products from other local farms and that they can make a one-stop? And, again, that convenience, get products from a handful of local farms in one place, still truly shop local, but not have to go 3 places to get those 4 or 5 things that they may be looking for. Maintaining loyalty, can be a little bit of a challenge. We realize, one, that there's a seasonality to a lot of your businesses, and so you may not necessarily be in front of customers 12 months out of the year. So what does that look like during the off season? Social media content, email marketing. Certainly we don't want to drown people in a sea of information for the sake of it. But sending, thankful for you email right after Thanksgiving, just to thank the customers you've had that season and let them know how much you look forward to seeing them back at the farm stand next year or back at the farmer's market, can go a long way. Sharing some of those feel-good, great moments people experienced during the season prior on social media, whether it's a throwback Thursday, a flashback Friday, a year-end roundup. There's all kinds of creative ways to maintain that loyalty. A couple of other ways to do that are contests and incentives. Now, certainly the incentive piece can be, it has a business impact, but I loved one of the things I heard early on in the research we did was that someone said that, She knows that some of her most loyal customers come to her on a certain day of the week. And so she always makes sure she picks some fresh flowers and slips them in their bag when they make their purchase, because she feels like it's really personal and it's an easy thing that she can do, but it lets them know how much she appreciates them. And she mentioned that she's had customers acknowledge that and say, oh, it's so thoughtful. And I just love that little pick me up that you slipped in my bag. So those little gestures can really go a long way. Contests are another way that you can sort of maintain loyalty, particularly during the off season. This is a chance to get creative. Certainly there is the sort of monetary voucher or gift card option where, you have $25 or so to spend at the farm stand, and everybody posts a picture on Instagram using a particular hashtag, or they share a photo on Facebook and tag your farm. Those are, some very easy ways to go about doing that. And the nice thing is that there are some free services that if you're only looking at maybe gathering at most 100 entries or so, there's not a cost for the technology. So those are always just things to keep in mind in terms of building the relationships. Now, one thing I mentioned early on was experiences, certainly not without its challenges in a COVID world, but there are still some creative ways that you can reward loyalty with experiences. So for example, if you happen to have animals on your farm, you can always have a Meet the Baby Farm Animals Day, and you can invite people to come out, and you can send that invitation to your most loyal customers. Maybe it's your top 15 or your top 25, and you invite them out for a special day to come and meet the animals and to bring their family. Refer a friend, bring a friend, another way to build great relationships and get more people into the customer roster. So what does that refer a friend look like? Well, that's certainly an opportunity to get creative, or the bring a friend. Maybe you're having a fall festival at the farm. Maybe it's the opening weekend for picking strawberries. Just think about those different opportunities that sort of naturally happen in the life cycle of your farm business or the farmer's market season, and how you can encourage people to bring their network of peers with them. One of the benefits there is that in a lot of ways you are tapping into some like-minded people. So people who may share some of those common values of community and relationships and freshness and flavor. And so you're getting an audience that's sort of warmed up for you. And it's not the cold call or, the blind pitch to see if someone would have an interest in supporting the business. Tied to that is referral cultivation. So again, the Bring a Friend Day, the sneak peek of meeting the baby farm animals, early access to the first picking weekend at the orchard or the berry patch. Those are all ways that you can maintain that loyalty, but also cultivate referrals. The other thing we want to think about with referrals is who in your network can help to make some introductions to get some new customers. So for example, if you supply greens to a local restaurant, and they have their whole patron base, do they want to co-promote something with you? Is there something you can do that's a win-win that allows them to tap into your audiences and you to tap into their audiences? Again, that's not the typical farmer-customer relationship, but it's certainly a relationship that has a lot of value. Do you have a small business who does holiday gifts? Becca mentioned the holiday gift guide early on. So for example, is there a way you could be the holiday gift provider for a small business in town who's already a customer of your farm? And then that gives you exposure to people they have relationships with. And again, it all comes back to helping to grow the customer base, which at the end of the day, we know is the chief objective, for all of your organizations. When you think about all of these pieces together, that time you spend talking to customers, finding out why they're there, the time you spend getting to know other farmers in the community and figuring out how you can complement one another with your offerings, and the time that you spend getting to know businesses in the community, that is all contributing to building a really strong brand and bolstering your brand equity. So pardon the non-Connecticut reference, but lines at farmers markets and lines at farm stands are a really happy problem. To see the same people coming back and continuing to support your business, bringing their friends with them, knowing that this is where they always get their tomatoes every summer, or every fall they go to this pumpkin patch and no other pumpkin patch. They took their kids there and now they're taking their grandkids there. That is all adding value to your overall brand. And so what are the relationship-based pieces that contribute to that? They are the word of mouth referrals. Again, 59% of the farmers we surveyed at the beginning of this engagement back in February or so said word of mouth referrals were the number one way that they were acquiring customers. That's a significant number. Not to say that a very high percentage of farmers didn't say they were using social media, but when it came to customer acquisition, it was word of mouth referrals. Third-party endorsements are also building brand equity. So if another farmer says, hey, you should get this product that I don't have from so-and-so, or a small business in the community says, oh, if you're looking for fresh produce or fresh dairy, you definitely want to stop here. Again, relationships also building brand equity, building recognition of your farm name, and building recognition of you as a thriving and contributing small business in the local economy. Another piece of that, building brand equity, are those online referrals. Now, some people will just go do it on their own and give you 5 stars on Facebook, and some people are happy to leave a Google review. Other people need a little bit of prompting. So maybe it's a pumpkin when they come to the pumpkin patch, or maybe it's, some apples when they stop by the orchard. Maybe it's, some, instead of 1 CSA share, getting 2 CSA shares. Just think about those things that you can do that are not a huge investment, but can go a long way in helping to cultivate those online reviews. A raffle, a giveaway, a drawing. Those are all ways that you can help to solicit authentic online reviews in a way that gives people just that little bit of extra motivation to say, you know what, I want to take the 5 minutes to do this. And that's where you get to the real value of not just, oh, I went to the farmer's market today. Oh, I went to the farmer's market to see this farm that I always get my corn from. Or I stopped at a farm stand on the way home versus I stopped at so-and-so's farm stand on the way home. And when you think about it, those are all talking points in day-to-day conversations and engagement that people have with their peers, and they're opportunities for brand exposure. And the stronger the relationship is, the more time you've invested in getting to know your customers and knowing that you're delivering what they're looking for, the greater the likelihood of having that name recognition, loyal following, and that really solid foundation of brand equity in the community that all together lays the foundation for you to be able to increase sales and attract new customers. So to wrap up sort of my portion of this tonight, one of the things I wanted to talk about is kind of the what's next. So I think we all go to trainings and workshops, and then we get information and think, well, what am I supposed to do with this now? And so a few things to take away from tonight in terms of thinking about how you are going to leverage the value of the existing relationships you have, and how you are going to build relationships with new customers who really value what you are bringing to the table. So 1, maximizing the value of the existing customers. Is that upselling? Is that an extra 20 or 30 minutes when somebody stops by to pick up their CSA share to let them know what else you offer, what's going to be happening during the upcoming season? Taking the time to think about your existing customers and how you can better leverage them as brand ambassadors. And again, that can be something as simple as a social media contest where you ask them to share your Instagram post, share your Facebook post. It only takes a couple of clicks. They're incentivized to do it with whatever, sort of reward or raffle or what have you that you're offering. But again, more people, more exposure, more opportunities to build another set of those really strong relationships. I really implore everybody to do a little consumer research, whether it's formal or informal. Ask people why they're there, how they found you, why they keep coming back, what else they'd like to see you offer at the farm stand. If you're thinking about changing your hours, adapting, how people can access your products, I always say, don't guess, just ask your customers. They're not going to hold back in 9 cases out of 10. So you might as well get some of that firsthand feedback and, tap into those relationships to help you make really valuable refinements to what you're already doing. Now, with it being the off season for most folks, think about how you're going to enhance and expand your existing relationships in 2021? What can you do to get your existing customers back at the farm sooner and shopping with you earlier in the season than they may otherwise? And what can you do to expand those relationships? And what can you do to, again, cultivate new relationships from those that you already have? And then lastly, just staying on people's radar. I think one of the things that's been said about consumer habits sort of in the post-COVID world is we don't know how they're going to change. We don't know if people are going to immediately shift back to their old behaviors or if they're going to adopt some of the new behaviors that they've built during this time. And so the more that you can stay on people's radar and let them know that while you may not be open today, you're coming back next season, you look forward to welcoming them, and you really appreciate their loyalty to your farm, are all investments in, you know, a stronger season next year. So with that, I'm going to hand things back over to Becca so she can make the next transition.
Yeah, thank you, Danielle. That was wonderful. Really thorough and really great kind of just broad overview. So thank you so much for that. And I know Danielle mentioned social media a couple times, and I'm just gonna give a little shout out. We did do social media training a couple weeks ago. So if you missed that and you're interested in it, you can go ahead and go onto Heart CT Grown website, and under resources, there's a recording of that training. So you can go ahead and give it a look if you're interested. But now we're going to turn it over to Allyson, and we'll let her share all of her knowledge. And yeah, so take it away.
Thank you. It's nice to see so many familiar names in the chat box. I'm, you know, missing being able to interact in real life with everyone at winter conferences this year, but it's nice to be able to connect a little bit. For those who are, sorry, I'm just trying to pull up the chat box in case someone has questions. For those of you who are unfamiliar, I own and operate Full Heart Farm in Ledyard, Connecticut. It's a super tiny farm. It's 6 acres. I grow on about 1.5 acres, primarily growing for CSA. We have about 110 vegetable shares, and then we also have about 50 flower shares in the season. We run a farm stand, which is what I'm here to chat about today, although that looked really different because of COVID. And so I'll try and distinguish our pre-COVID and our COVID days. And if I'm being confusing, just let me know. And then we also wholesale to about 6 restaurants. There we go. I was hoping, you know, so I had read through Danielle's report and was hoping to just sort of highlight the 4 points in her research and my personal experiences with marketing, which are, you know, really limited. And but they've brought us the level of success that we're looking for, which is to have a business that supports our community and also supports our family. And Danielle had mentioned, you know, that like word of mouth referrals were the #1 source of business for most farmers that she talked with. And that's certainly the case for our farm. But I would say that our experience is that like social media is our online word of mouth. People, especially during COVID, are not just chatting randomly with other people. And so our online presence has been really important. I have a pretty low tolerance for dealing with the public. So our farm, it like was only ever open for 3 hours a week. like on a good day. And so for us, that sort of like very first key interaction that Danielle was talking about, that comes through our website or through our social media, because that's how most people are finding our business. And even if they're finding it because a friend shops here or a neighbor shops here or something, they're almost always like checking us out online first, if nothing else, to get directions here. And so we've found that a really authentic online presence is invaluable for both growing and maintaining customer relationships. Aside from that, like, we're a very local community business. So in town, that means having relationships with the postal service and the library and the town hall. And, we have a presence in all of those places, even if it's just because we bring them fresh flowers every week, or we teach gardening classes to senior housing, or we're donating food to the food pantry. But I think having those real connections, like Danielle talked about, to other businesses in town, and is really how we grew the business. It grew slowly. We're entering our 10th season. And our first year, I was 23 and single and had no idea what I was doing. And we had 25 members. And like, it's been perfect that I've like set my own pace for growing. And so I'll be honest, I keep reading all these articles about how COVID has been a boom for local producers, and that's not been my experience, primarily because we weren't able to increase production to meet demand quickly enough. By the time restaurants were shut down in mid-March, like, my plan was set for the year, and I couldn't adapt any of much of our growing. And so for us, like, COVID was a huge strain financially, because the cost of doing business this year was significantly higher than normal. Not primarily because of the amount of staff that it took to transition to contactless pickup and prepackaged orders and maintaining distancing and all of the extra cleaning that we took on, so that we would feel the confidence that we were telling people that, like, your product is safe. But also just like our packaging costs were through the roof, and it just felt like hard. And perhaps we're alone in that, but we learned a lot. And our focus throughout the pandemic has just been on maintaining the relationships that we already have, and focusing on clear communication so that our members know what to expect. They feel comfortable. Everyone was really stressed this year, myself included, but I'm like really skilled at worrying, so that comes naturally to me. And we tried to be, sympathetic with other people, and make their lives easier. In terms of freshness, which is one of the things that Danielle's report had really focused on, these are basics for most of you, but I would emphasize that, particularly if you're here to learn about Farmstands, as the talk was titled, you should only open your farm to the public during the hours that you're able to keep produce fresh and like staff smiling. And I think there's this common perception that like farmers should be available to the community 24/7. And if you don't have your farm stand opened for whenever someone wants to stroll in and purchase an ear of corn, then you're missing out on business. Like, I think that that's a fallacy. And that if you're focused on delivering a fresh product, people will work it into their schedule. And the level of sanity that would bring you should be valued above your annoying neighbor's desire to buy corn at a moment's notice. We grow 275 different varieties of vegetables and cut flowers. which is a lot. But that is because we grow what our customers want, and we have a lot of different customers and a lot of different types of customers. One of the challenges that I saw echoed in Danielle's report were obstacles in connecting with ethnic communities over in parts of Northeastern Connecticut about how to grow the sorts of crops that they're interested on buying. Our experience of that has been to like really involve them in trialing. So we'll tell people like, this year we trialed peanuts. It was a bummer. But it didn't really matter. It never really matters how much of a bummer it is, because people love to follow along. And then they're really engaged, and like nobody really cares if you fail other than you. And you should be used to that by now if you're a farmer. So I think that there's an immense opportunity, if you've felt discouraged connecting or growing different things. Like I think if you can engage and create communication there, like Danielle was talking about, those relationships can really be leveraged through collaboration. I have a spouse, and so relationships takes constant work and mindfulness, and that's just the same with people that you're feeding week after week after week, which is always the goal with a farm, to have repeat customers and develop a relationship with them. One of the questions that we were discussing was, how do you grow relationships during the pandemic, and how do you maintain those relationships during the off season? And for us, like this is the busy time of year for prepping a lot of that marketing, coming up with a calendar that matches our crop plan, prepping email templates and social media posts, and hiring photographers. We just barter with them, but hiring makes me sound fancy, to come out at points in the season where we're lacking the photos that we need to have, is really important for the sort of like consistent and timely communication that people are looking for. I think too often farmers fall into this trap of being like, oh, well, I have a lot of tomatoes, so I need to sell tomatoes. So I'll put on Facebook that we have tomatoes for sale. And like at that point, it's almost too late unless you're selling them for sale, like on special, or offering something other than like regular tomatoes. Like our goal is to always like build that anticipation from now. We're choosing our seeds, our tomato variety seeds. We grow 30 different varieties of tomatoes for our seedling sale and for our CSA. What are your favorites? Like, oh, the seeds arrived. Oh, the seeds got planted. Oh, they got potted up. That sort of like excitement that we feel because we are optimistic about every change in the season is what our customers also get excited about. And so I know that it feels overwhelming to like constantly be sharing, and it doesn't have to be constant or all the time, but particularly if you're focused on selling something in particular, you should have it on your calendar now to remember to be engaging folks throughout the year. I think perhaps one of the most valuable marketing tools for a farmer is to understand your ideal customer. And that's important because it's easy to just be like, well, I grow vegetables, so I want to sell vegetables, and I want to sell them to people who eat vegetables or anyone who'll buy them. I don't really care who buys my vegetables. But if you care who buys your vegetables, then it's really easy to find people like that person who will buy your vegetables. And I think that's a really like important way, even if it's not intentional, to target customers that you like and that will like you, so our ideal customer is Val. She's like, she's real. That's her real name. She brings us cookies every Friday afternoon for staff snack. And like, but she also has characteristics about her that can be identified. She's an empty nester and she's had health complications that mean that she values her health, and she eats healthy. She takes care of her body through yoga and playing tennis. Like, she has a dog, on and on. She likes to sew, on and on and on. I know these things about Val because I've known Val for 10 years as a member of the farm. But those, like, knowing those things help me to connect with other customers. So like, Val has a dog that she really loves. We have dog cookies for all the dogs that come to the farm. It's, like, nice for them to have something to look forward to. Like, Val also has grandkids, so we have farm animal stickers. And just like knowing about Val helps us to know about people like Val who are basically the people that we feed. It's not like all of our customers have dogs, but sometimes it feels like that because I don't have a dog and I buy a lot of dog cookies. But it's important to just be sympathetic with people right now, because everyone is just going through a hard time. And I think some people were really challenging to deal with this year. And so any little thoughtful thing that you can do was easily remembered for them because, especially people who felt isolated or lonely, and that was the source of some of their bitterness. Like, it made it really easy for them to remember when we did something like small to let them know that we were thinking of them. We bought toilet paper for all of our members the second week of the pandemic. And that was at a time when we were hemorrhaging money, but also like it's $80 a case. And they were also appreciative. And then when it was later in the year and like it was getting hard to find seeds, like we were packaging up whatever our members needed for their gardens and sending them on our way because like we always have extra seeds. Maybe I should work on that, but it's not a stretch for us. I mentioned before our farm stand was closed this year due to COVID. That's what the farm stand looks like. It's not a great building by any means. It was mostly falling down when I purchased the property, and it's like, mostly not falling down now, but we have our moments. It's just white, but we try and always make sure that the farm stand is colorful. It has wide walkways so that multiple people can fit in, because again, we're only open for 3 hours a week. And we usually have at least 150 families come through during that time. And we try and keep it, maybe clean's not the right word, tidy. Clear signage, clear pricing, and always staffed with educated or friendly people, which is like me. Not that I'm educated or friendly all the time, but I can be for 3 hours. And people really value that consistency. This year, 100% of our direct to consumer sales moved online for 2020. That was the right choice for our family. And so we made it work. And we made it work because we shared our values with people and attracted people who shared those values with us. And, especially people who were concerned about their health and safety and looking for a really safe way to access local food. We formed a farm collective, which has had almost 50 local food businesses involved at one point or the other, but usually has around 30-ish each week. And it functions as an online farmers market. So people purchase goods directly from the same types of vendors that they would shop with at the farmers market. We offer, essentially a full selection of groceries, and they order online, they pay by credit card. We taught a lot of people how to use the internet back in April. But like they get it now, and it's easier. Like everything gets easier. They come for curbside delivery. That part hasn't gotten easier. Like we run so many steps, it's not even funny. But for us, that worked. I'm not saying it was a good idea or that I would recommend it. But one of the things that Danielle had said in her report was like messaging focused around availability and contactless pickup and safe handling is what should be talked about, and that was certainly true in our situation, and we do that by sharing pictures of us wearing face masks and explaining to people how we do things. Kelly asked how we absorb the credit card transaction cost. Yeah, it costs a fortune. We went from primarily being a cash business, a cash/check, to moving 100% online. And so that cost had already been built into our CSA price. But for the farm stand sales, yeah, that's hard. I told you we lost a lot of money this year. But we gained a lot of customers. And for the partners that we work with, the other farms, we take at least a 10% cut. And that doesn't cover the costs of running the collective. But that does help to cover those tangible costs of credit card fees and bags and staff to pack orders and that sort of thing. But no, it's expensive. It didn't feel like a fair time to raise our prices. They're already pretty high. Intentionally, like we want what we offer to feel special. And we also work really hard to produce what we do. But yeah, no, it's hard. Whoops. So I think I had with this side plan to talk about that increased cost. We purchased that mountain of bleachable, made in the USA plastic totes to pack all of our farm shares in, converted from a market style pickup where we didn't pack anything. People just came. A decade ago we were packing shares. That was the thing to do. And then we switched to market style pickup. So people would choose what they wanted with minimal selection and pack their own bags. And so that was a huge cost throughout the season. And again, we just ate it. And we used so many bags. I think normally we spend about $500 on plastic bags, around there. And this year it was over 10 grand. So it's just a lot. And we delivered, we delivered a lot of orders. We fed a lot of people. We directed over $250,000 back into the local food economy here. And that felt really important. It still feels really important. We had so many people who, especially early on, didn't have another great way to access local food because it's not that easy. And so it was important, but it, also tiring. Does anyone have any other questions that I can answer like optimistically? Perhaps.
Well, I just want to jump in real quick, Allyson, and say thank you for sharing all that. I know it has been a tough season for farmers on many levels, from the challenges of COVID and the increased costs of COVID and the increased demand that you can't adjust for, to like stupid weather, just not participating and not helping out in this crazy year. So I really appreciate that honesty and forthrightness. So thank you for that. So yeah, let's open it up to questions, definitely to Allyson, but also to Danielle. You are welcome to ask it yourself, since it's talking time. But if you're not asking a question, we ask that you do remain on mute so everyone can hear each other. You can, of course, put your question in the chat box. But since we are on that relational sort of note, Allyson, I'll kick us off because I don't have any questions and I don't see anybody ready to go. One of the things for me when I was working at Farmstands was, you work really hard physically and mentally throughout the entire week. And then there's that chunk of relationship that happens at the farm stand. And you talked a little bit about this, is that, for your own sanity, you all choose to, when your farm stand is open, to only be open for 3 hours during the week. But I know that sometimes those 3 hours are still too many hours. So I guess, yeah, just wanting to hear about how to work through that as farmers. Like, it's so relationally based, but it's also, I think, the relationship component can be one of the most taxing parts of farming. So I don't know, is that a good question? is that a good way to put the question? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think, gotta go easy on yourself, but also that it doesn't necessarily, like, people feel so touched when you just remember the smallest things. And so I just try and, like, on the attendance sheet, like, jot things down, like, and it's not like a life history of everyone, because you don't have to learn about everyone in 1 week, but remembering someone's dog's name, or kid's birthday that's coming up, or that they were going on vacation to somewhere, like, all of those are really important starting points. And we didn't have that level of connection with people this year because we did contactless pickup and curbside delivery exclusively. And so, we did set up a farm stand for our members so that they could pick up extra stuff while they were at the farm. And that was just self-serve on our system. And I think it was hard for people to have that same, like, well, what do I do with a kohlrabi? Not that I don't send out recipes and cooking instructions and everything, but it's just nice to have someone, like, explain it to you. And I'm really good about, like, knowing, like, well, she has a really picky husband, or, like, he doesn't ever do anything other than roast vegetables. And, like, those are things that you learn about people, like, over the course of the season. And I sort of had to just, like, generalize all of that this year, because so much of our interaction with people was digital. And in some ways that, like, allows us to connect with a wider audience, and in other ways like it makes it harder to connect with people on a personal level. But you know, we still do little things for people all the time. Like, I don't know. Like we just always are trying to think of like little things so that people remember that we're real people.
Yeah, I love that toilet paper. That was awesome. And I'm sure that really, really had an impact on your customers. Like,
that was for week number 2. So
that's
yeah.
amazing. That's so amazing. So, any questions for the floor? I have another question ready to go, but I want to give people the option to speak.
I'll add something to that, being present for pickup or your farm stand. I've also, over time, learned that I have the summer where I'm just really cranky and I don't want to be around people. And so to have an employee handle CSA pickup is really refreshing, because then my members get to know the people that work on the farm. I don't have to do it all the time. And then when I do show up, it's like, oh, Farmer Susan's here, like it makes it a little more special. And frankly, I don't want to be around people like that all the time. So that's taken me a little while to realize the value of employees handling a lot of those interactions for me.
And potentially even like, volunteers that work well too, I would assume, like, not for Susan, but I know one farm that I worked at, we had an excellent volunteer that, that was some of what we were able to do, is exchange produce and everything for them being at the farm stand, and they did an excellent job. But obviously you're correct, Susan, it's not good for all volunteers, select people. So anyone else? I have a question for Danielle, if Jeff wants to go though.
Well, I have a question for the gallery here. I'm looking at all these names with lots of smart farmers here, and I'm wondering if any of you would be willing to share a quick story like Allyson's Val story, a relational market. I'm sure a lot of stuff Danielle said was resonating for you. You know exactly what this is all about. And I wonder if you would share a quick story of what relational marketing means to you. I'm looking at you. All of these names. Come on, you guys.
I had a great experience with first-time customers this year whose daughter bought them a CSA share, and she doesn't even live in the area. So they came to me very randomly, and maybe the first, this is a little detailed, which maybe is too much, but the very first pickup, the first time we met, I see there's like an Alabama sticker on his car or something. And how many people in Connecticut have an Alabama sticker on their car? So of course I say, did you go to Alabama? And the guy was like, yes, class of 1970. And I said, well, my brother went to Alabama. Like who from the Northeast goes to school at Alabama? So that was it. Like that was the beginning of like the best friendship ever. And they became like such loyal fans of the farm and totally bought into the whole everything, hook, line, and sinker, just because of that one little connection. And I got Alabama yearbooks to look at, and I got stickers, and I got ponchos, and they brought me a gift at the end of the season, and like all these things. And I always chatted with them when they came, and it developed into this really nice friendship. And it was really just because of this one tiny little thing that I noticed. So Allison's really right in that small things can go a really long way. And, you know, while their daughter bought them their summer share, they then themselves signed up for the fall share. And I'm sure like they will be my customers for life. It was really great.
Thank you. Anyone else? I might pick on you.
Yeah, I'll share something quick that I noticed was new this year was since I had a lot more time spending on the farm, I would be outside just working, and I noticed a lot more people driving by and seeing me work and just staying in their car and like yelling over to me and wanting to know what I was working on and growing. And I got a few more customers that way, standing at a distance while they were in their car with their window rolled down. But I did try something new as well this year, because I understood with COVID that a lot of people were struggling. At my farm stand, I would choose particular days of the week where I would offer free vegetables. And then anyone could leave, if they wanted to leave a donation or anything for that day. And I actually noticed that the days that I put out free vegetables, I actually made more money on those days where people would contribute what they wanted, what they thought the value of the vegetables were. And then I had a lot of people leave notes of thank you, and for people who would just take what they needed. Some days people would just take everything, which was fine. But I would get so many notes of thanks. And then I did get one note in particular of someone who decided to take the vegetables and donate it to a veterans camp in my town. So that ended up being another connection that I made. And it felt really great to just help another needy community. So it was a big risk for me to give like away free vegetables, but it was just a random opportunity where I felt like, you know what, I'm in an okay position to financially, and I noticed the community that I live in there's a lot of low income people who live in my immediate neighborhood. So and I know everyone in the neighborhood, so it was nice to give back. So that was something that I tried different this year, and it was to great success, and that actually helped to build connections with my community and to help my customer base. I think that's it. So.
Thank you. Somebody's asking you in the chat, what town do you live in?
I live in Ashford.
Ashford. Awesome, Ginger.
Corsican farm, right, Ginger?
Yeah, Coruscant Farm.
Corsican.
Anybody else have a story to share? Nancy?
Andromeda.
Calling me out?
Yes.
Hi, I feel like we have like so our farm's been here since 1942. So people know my great grandparents and come to see us at the farm stand. They're like, oh, is your farm still there? And then we end up with them coming back to the farm, or like their kids coming back. People are like, oh, my parents used to bring us to your farm when we were little. We didn't know you were still around, when they see us at the farmer's market. And then they'll end up coming back and buying plants from us in the greenhouse. So I don't know, I always try to remember those people. I'm always like the lady with the grandma, and she said she came and bought petunias when she was 5 with her grandma, and it's hard to remember everything, but like oh, and Oscar, and people like to come and like see like the 5th generation of the farm, and I try to like also keep up with them on Facebook too. Like people will comment and be like, oh, 5th generation. Then when I see them in real life, I try to be like, right, that one on Facebook who's like a picture of a chicken and not a person. But yeah, I don't know. Spend a lot of time like remembering little things about people and like who their grandparents are to like make relationships with them. And they either end up coming to our greenhouse for the CSA, and it's really cool and exhausting, but also really cool.
Brooke, I saw that you had raised a hand. Would you like to share something? Maybe? Oh, it's all right. Well, this is great. I feel like this is a great last workshop for us, or training for us to have for the 3 that we did, especially near the end of the season. Because as much as so many of us didn't necessarily get into farming for relationships, relationships happen to be a huge part of it. So I'm really, really glad for that. Nancy, were you about to say something?
Yes, I was just going to comment that, you know, we've been in business for a number of years now, but it certainly was a very, very challenging year. And going into the growing season, or, you know, the pandemic kind of shutting us down around March, we did offer like curbside, basically touchless pickup for what we normally had as our monthly flash markets. And it was, you know, there were a lot of people from the town who were more so berry customers than meat customers of ours. And the flash markets that we do are really based around our, you know, our meat sales and whatever we have seasonal. But this year, you know, people were really, because they were under the gun and trying to stay out of the bigger stores, and instead of just driving by and thinking that we had 50 pet cows, they were, you know, they reached out either by phone or like if we were outside working and just, you know, asked like, what, do you have meat for sale, or do you have eggs? Where normally, you know, they just like to drive by and enjoy the view more so. And they were, you know, we got many notes, you know, like we put their meat order together and a bill and put it outside just the hour that they were going to come in. And, you know, along with the payment in the cooler was, you know, just so many nice notes that they were so grateful that they had that option. And to, you know, be able to have us fulfill that need for them. So, you know, we're working on that to, you know, hopefully not lose those customers going into, you know, if anything changes and goes back to more normal, because it is kind of what I feel like we've been all wishing for, is for people to understand how important it is to eat more locally and to support, you know, farmers right in your neighborhood, and not just when the going gets tough. But, you know, we also are very challenged, you know, grateful for those new customers and, you know, trying to cultivate that, you know, relationship with those people who were maybe just berry customers, but then, you know, tried our meat and eggs and whatever we did have at the farm stand. But it's, you know, with meat production, it's near impossible. You cannot change that on a dime. We have, you know, beef that takes, you know, it's a 3-year commitment. I got to breed the cow, I got to birth a healthy calf, and then I have to grow it and finish it all the way to the end. And so that is just something that, you know, it takes more than 60 seconds of their time to explain. And I've never had less inventory on meat before, and we're happy to feed more people, but it's definitely a conundrum to, you know, have this like want and need for more people to eat local, but it's, you know, it's stressful and makes me sweat and get anxious when I have not this much meat in my walk-in freezer. I feel naked right now because I just don't know when it's going to be like stocked full again. And so, you know, as you know, anyone else would be like, oh my God, you have so much meat. But just knowing that, you know, we're feeding so many more strangers to the farm than our regular people, you know, I feel like I want to hoard it for the people who I've fed before. I don't know if that's good or bad, but it's one of my observations. But they come and they pay me money, so I give them the meat.
Well, I love these stories. Feel free to share them with me, by the way. You know, I run Heart CT Grown social media, and one of the things I love to do is share the stories of the farmers in the state. And these are the types of stories that people want to hear about. So, you know, if you didn't get to share, or if you did and you want to type something up and send it my way with a nice picture or two, go ahead. And I'd love to put that out on our social media to let people know about your experiences. But we're going to wrap it up for the night to respect everyone's time. Again, thank you, everyone. Thank you, especially Allyson and Danielle, for all that preparation and going through all those details with us. I will be sending out a recording of this tomorrow, as well as the survey. If y'all could please remember to take the survey. Again, that'll help us with funding in the future. And thank you all so much for participating in not just listening, but also interacting. So it makes for a better learning experience for everybody. So thank you so much. Have a great night.
Thanks.